off with all kind of ambition and did not finish school. Latinos were at a rate of 48. So you had Latino males who couldn't finish high school who were then going to get incarcerated. I mean, we were 1/3. So 1 out of 3 of Latino males and African American males were being incarcerated in my district, and that was horrible numbers. Another thing is that we had a slew of INA veterans that were returning back with no jobs, none. The divorce rate went up to 70% in the military, right there at Ellington Field Air Force Base. Sits right in my district. And so those things started making me think. And come to find out, we were sitting on a energy corridor that stretches from Pasadena to Baytown, and they lacked men with skill set. So you had INA veterans who could easily come back to jobs, especially when Exxon was granting them 6 months of vocational training in order to be specifically go to those jobs. I said something needs to be done. I felt like it wasn't being done. I felt like we were being overlooked, and I put my hat in alone and ran against a legend, and I lost. But I think in reality, had I not lost or had I not stepped up, we wouldn't be here today. So I think there's something called divine providence.
Talk to us a little bit about your background, Mr. Brain.
Well, I was telling you earlier before we began, I got seriously humble beginnings. I mean, I grew up in Lake Charles, Louisiana. My dad left my mom before my twin and I was born. So I grew up poor. Matter of fact, I grew up so poor, I couldn't even afford the O and the R. I was just po. I remember sitting out in shelters, waiting for shelters to open, spending the night in parks with my mom in the car, just waiting for an opportunity to be next. And my mom had a lot of pride. My grandfather and my grandmother did pretty well, but she would not rely on them to support us. Unfortunately, I lost my mom at 11. I was a ward of the state for a year. My grandparents adopted me. Ultimately, they sent me to college at Dillon University in New Orleans, but unfortunately, they passed away when I got to school. I basically put myself through New Orleans. I've been alone since I was 18. To fast forward, I stayed in New Orleans pretty much all that time. Went to Texas for a while, Dallas, Texas, to be specific. But eventually, you know, Katrina kicked me out of New Orleans, is what happened. It's how I got here. And we came, I came to Houston along with a caravan of soldiers, honestly. I've been a member of the United States Air Force for, 12 years on the traditional side, but I remember being from New Orleans, we were basically done from the moment we stepped in here. I mean, people had already corralled us, already told us who we were and what we were, defined that we were bad people. I fought to find a job when I got here. It was difficult to kind of redefine what success was for me. One thing before we move on, though, I have to say is that one of the reasons why I decided I would step out on faith was because I saw the government fail. Many of the bodies that I was pulling out of Katrina, because I was doing search and rescue, were African Americans and Latinos. There's a huge base of Latinos in New Orleans people never even hear about. And so I think the biggest thing for me is it was time I realized that the government doesn't have all the answers. It's not going to save all of us. I saw it fail, and the only thing that's really going to help us is to make sure that we become individually responsible for our growth, economically and socially.
I tell you, you have a lot of courage for even jumping in against the senator, and I acknowledge the fact that you are a Republican in a Democratic seat. What made you think that you could actually win that seat, considering the numbers were far more Democrat than Republican?
Well, let me be honest with you. Me running was all about agitation and the mustard seed of faith that I had that maybe someone might listen enough. There was a gamut of things that wasn't being done. Latinos and blacks were just taking it. They thought it couldn't be a change. Mario, let's face it, was a legend. To run against Mario, you faced opposition just saying you wanted to. But he was a senator. He wasn't a king. He was an elected official, not a monarch. And I think what happens is that sometimes when we sit in positions so long, we lose sight of other things as well. Now, Mario was a great legend as far as the Latino community, but we needed him to be holistic. We needed him to be a champion for African Americans as well. We needed him to be a champion for conservatives as well. We needed a champion for the entire district. And so a lot of things that became so outdated and so many things were so obstinate that people weren't working together.
Do you feel that being that it is a special election, so basically it's a nonpartisan vote, if you will. I mean, there's not a primary and there's not a general election, so more than likely there'll probably be a runoff. But do you feel that being that you're probably the only, well, there's another conservative, Dorothy Olmos, she's from the Republican Party running in this. Is that an advantage or disadvantage? What do you feel?
Well, I do think it's an advantage. I think we finally got to the point, especially in minority communities, where it doesn't matter if you're an R or a D. What really matters is whether or not you can provide the answers. When we've been led on a Democratic lead for, what, 17 years as a senator, it may be time for us to start venturing off into some new ideas. It may be time for us to start venturing off into ideas like the vouchers program that gives parent choice. It may be time for us to start thinking about charter school ideologies and how to combine ISDs with charter school ideologies. ISD functionality is big. You have a lot of programs where ISDs are teaming up with KIPP and YES, and they're doing extraordinary things. Listen, we have to think outside the box on some of these issues. On the areas of education, 60% of our revenue is going toward education, and people are still saying we need to pour more education in. In the top 5 per pupil monies that's going toward children in the 50 states of America, out of the top 5, none of them are in the top 10. So you take states that are giving several amounts of money, pouring money into students. It's not the per pupil monies that makes a great pupil. What makes a great pupil is the investment of the teachers and the parents that are working with that individual. It's not more money that we need, especially when we're spending $2,700 for some teacher from New York to come down and teach Texans. Texans don't learn like people from New York.
I want to say that it's very rare that you find an African American that's a Republican. What is it that made you go Republican versus Democrat?
I know, seeing a black Republican is like seeing a unicorn, right? Like Sasquatch.
No, there's plenty more.
The truth is that there are plenty more. And that's the thing. There are many closet Republicans, not only in the African American community, but there are a lot of conservatives in the Latino community. Let's face it, guys. We can talk candidly. Mm-hmm. At this point, what we need in SD6 is an individual that can sit at the table and get things done. Period. The last 17 years have cost us absolutely everything. We're losing in unemployment. Mm. With the GDP in Aldine and Galena Park, the GDP in Galena Park are nowhere near the GDP in Pasadena and Baytown. Nowhere near. We are in Aldine, one of the top Latino areas. We are actually $2,000 above the poverty line. So we're just $2,000 above the poverty line in Aldine, and we're still talking about growth. We haven't grown at all. We can't continue to do the same thing. We're losing our kids. We're losing unemployment. We have 1 in 3 minorities going to prison. That leaves the kids out there, the women out there, minority women with no dad, with no fathers to father their children. This is systemic.
Yeah, well, let's go back to my original question was, why would you run as a Republican versus a Democrat? Was it because of strategy, or was it because you saw the numbers of Republicans that would back you, or what was it that really convinced you to run as a Republican?
It's my ideologies.
Okay.
I don't want a handout.
Okay.
I want a hand up.
Okay.
I want the same thing for my district. My district does not need more help. You'll hear that all the time. We need help. We need help. No, what we need is empowerment. Mm-hmm. We need the empowerment. We need for doors to be opened, and those doors have been closed, Ben, for years. Mm-hmm. If you were to vote a Democrat in right now, freshman Democrat going into a majority Republican Senate, what's going to get done? Last 8 years, Mario authored 0 bills that got passed. Why is that? Because they're obstinate. 4 years. Think about Cara Alvarado. 4 years. Authored. Can't get it done because the House is full of auras. The Senate is full of auras. Mm. We need SD6. We need someone who's going to come to the table right away, first day. Hey, guys, I'm here. And this is what my district needs. You want the pipeline? Sounds good to me. Give me that $36 million you just found in Medicaid fraud. Give me that. And let's funnel that to SD6. Matter of fact, let's put it in our pre-Ks because we just gutted pre-Ks. Or why don't we do this? Why don't we take a Democratic ideology and tax the sodas? Because according to studies, Latinos are drinking sodas like crazy and it's causing obesity. We can tackle 2 birds with 1 stone. Why don't you do this? Give me the $4 billion that a soda tax is supposed to bring in. Give me that $4 billion, and I'll appropriate it to the $5 billion that we took out of education last year. Alternative revenue. It's not pouring more money into education. It's allocating the funds that we know are there into the right areas. That's why I'm Republican.
Don't you think that all sounds good and fine in theory, but to actually execute that, being a freshman senator, which whoever one's going to be the freshman senator, and it is. But if you look at the history and the struggle of the civil rights and what have you, and do you feel that basically you would be selling out on the people?
Not at all.
Your ideology?
Not at all. If anything, I'll be like Django. Have you seen the movie Django?
Yeah.
I'll be the 1 in 10,000. Here's why. Because if you put an African-American Republican in a seat where there's a majority, all of a sudden Harris County becomes the place to go. It becomes the corridor for every activity there is. Why? Because his area is multiple Democrats. You have a Republican who's leading multiple Democrats. If you want anything done, he becomes the corridor because he has the opportunity to say yay or nay. When everything's coming to a halt or when everything's coming to butting heads, both sides will come through Harris County to get it done. Why? Because you have an African-American senator there. Let's think about it. Latinos make up 500,000 in population in my district. 14% of them are actually registered voters. An average of only 6% of them actually vote. That's less than 10,000. Less than 10,000. We have work to do. More educated Latinos need to be voting. We need a Republican in office to make that happen. And right now, 50 to 55,000 African Americans are voting in. So that means that Mario Gallegos was getting office off an African American vote. How racist is it for us to say that an African American cannot lead Latinos, but Latinos can lead African Americans? I think we're all in the same boat. I think as long as there's a minority there, he will fight. Because what happened when Maria starts marrying Toby, and all of a sudden Maria's last name is Jackson? What happens when Janiqua starts falling in love with Jose, and all of a sudden her name is Janiqua Martinez? They tried to corral us. They're trying to divide us as well. But eventually it's going to come to a point where you can't divide us on demographics anymore. It doesn't matter if you're black or brown. As long as you're a minority and you're in the majority as an aura, you'll get it done and you'll get it filtered to the people who need it the most.
Good point.
Apparently you're a numbers guy. And so why don't you do the breakdown? Because I don't even know, to be honest with you. What is the breakdown of this district? Is it the percentage Hispanic, Black, and white, and Asian? What are those breakdowns percentage?
I'm not sure of the Asians because they only make up roughly 1.8% of our district. But
okay.
You have over 77 African Americans, over 80-something, that's 1,000 that is, 80-something thousand Anglos, and then you have probably roughly about 400,000 Latinos.
Okay, and the voting age population that are registered to vote, what's the breakdown?
Registered voters, 14% of Latinos, and between the Anglos and the Blacks, you're still hovering somewhere around 76 to 80%.
All this conservative views that you have, what's your views on comprehensive immigration reform?
There has to be a road. And let me just say this, I want to say this equivocally. The DREAM Act is not the answer. It's a deferral. I have friends who would not dare put themselves on the line. 2 years? You're not making me a citizen in 2 years. You're actually determining whether or not I'm going to be one. You're giving me a card. That doesn't make me a citizen. That's not a road. Here's an opportunity for a road. All these big businesses are hiring undocumented immigrants. You want to hire them. That's awesome. Why don't you do this? Why don't you also sponsor them so you can give them some dignity? So they don't have to move every 6 months, as we know is what the population, 40% of the Latino population is doing. Why don't we can just give someone some dignity? They can say, listen, we hire you, we make sure that we sponsor you so you can become a citizen. It's the same thing that we do in the Air Force, in the military. You know, it really is a spit in the face for us to tell individuals who have been working to become citizens for 10 years, waiting and taking tests, right? Also, it's a spit in the face to the individual that goes off to Afghanistan, comes back nationalized. He fought for his country so that he can become a citizen. Now, when you look at that, that's what Mario stood for, fighting. These individuals, they fought. and they won their dignity. And that makes the citizenship of America and Texas very profound. If we weaken that like the DREAM Act does, the DREAM Act is a deferral and it weakens our citizenship. It is not an answer. It's far from an answer. But I can tell you what could be the answer. We just don't have a lot of time.
And you know, with all due respect to the senator, but he's not here. And I know he was the sit-in senator, and there's a special election due to his death and what have you. But be that as it may, he's not in the race. There's 7 other people in the race. So what separates you from the other 7?
I have the answers. You'll hear them, they'll have all the sound bites. But they're not giving you solutions. They're not giving you solutions on how to satisfy the debt. The individuals that you see come through once they pour money into education, but they won't tell you to reallocate. They won't tell you to come up with alternative revenue sources. You're going to hear sound bites. I'm going to give you answers. And I'm going to be at the table where the individuals that listen to me will believe in those answers. And they're going to give me what we need because I just happen to be a minority. And that is like dynamite. That will blow everybody out the water. It'll be gold for SD6. Because if you want something done, you're going to have to go through SD6 to get it done.
I'm actually enjoying the conversation. You know, actually, so you get elected. We do have 7 more, and here's some of the scenarios that could play out. Everyone's expecting there to be a runoff election after this one, the special election that is runoff. And we have 8 total candidates. And during the regular election, you picked up 30% of the vote, right?
That's correct.
In the regular election, we pick up 30% of that vote. And then, so if we have the other 7 split up the other 70%, you know, you might end up being in the runoff.
Listen, I see you guys out and about all the time. Let's face it, Aristotle was right. The most profound faculty humans have is the faculty of reason. Reason. So let's reason for a minute. 7 Latinos, 1 African American. That already is powerful. It already drags people to look and see, what is this race all about? 2 Republicans. If 4 of the Dems, including the 6 Green parties and the Independents, pull from the Latino vote, right, and they pull from the rest of the disparaging votes of Mario Gallegos, then what do you have? You have a Republican coming straight through the middle. No one's going to fight 38,000. 38,000 Republicans came out and voted, and they pressed R.W. Bray. And they're going to remember me because 9,000 came out in the primary. With just 9,000 of them with a race that's projected to only pull in 5%, that's a runoff, if not a win. I can speak to you all rationally, but I can't speak necessarily to the regular Joe Blow because he won't understand what we're looking at. But we know where this race is going. And this is an opportunity for us to turn the tide for SD6, to finally get monies in the SD6 that's been overdue for a long time. You don't see a Katie barking about needing more money. Why? Because they got a candidate there that's getting it, a Republican candidate. You don't see Huffman saying she needs more money. Why? Because she's getting the money she needs. SD6 is surrounded from Galveston to Fort Bend, surrounded by what? Republican senators. And SD6 still has the highest dropout rate. Why is that? Because the money's not getting there. That on top of the fact that the city of Houston is spending our property taxes, reallocating our property taxes. That means the ISDs aren't getting the money they're supposed to get in the first place. And that's why they're begging for more money.
So if you're successful on election day, or fortunate enough to make the runoff, and let's say you become the next sitting senator of District 6, what will you do to reach out to the Latino community as far as business, as far as your team, your staff, as far as education? I know you got to leave because you have a debate, so touch on those real briefly.
3 things. Number 1, I'm in the community. I have no problem working with Latinos because the bottom line is most of my friends are Latino. If you're in Texas, your best friend is probably Latino. We're not divided as much as they would like us to believe that we're divided. Second thing is this. Education is paramount, and that's a universal language. It doesn't matter if you're white, black, Hispanic. You're talking education, you got somebody's ear. And reaching out to the Latino community, I wouldn't have to. All I got to say is education, and they will come because they want better education. If I'm talking about parent choice, look, there are rich people all over SD6. They can send their kids anywhere. If I go to a poor Latino and say, listen, I think your kid is just as worthy as their kid? Why don't I do this? Why don't I give you a voucher where you can go to any ISD you want to? Pick one. I bet you they'll pick one that gives the best education. That's parent choice. And you've just made education equal. Why is it that the rich get the best education? When we have ISD zoning laws that criminalize if you lie on the application because you want your child to get a better one. I won't have to reach out more to Latinos. Latinos know where I'm going.
What about business?
Business is a good point. Get rid of franchise taxes. You give 2-year exemptions to any minority group, small business starting up for business personal property taxes. You're done. Business personal property taxes are killing small businesses because they don't even know they exist, especially in the minority community. Next thing you know, you got Purdue, Brandon, and Linebarger knocking at your door and saying you owe $1,000 or $2,000. Like what? On what? Computers and some pencils? Mm-hmm. You didn't even know about it. I won't have to reach out to Latinos. Latinos know that I know. I'm the Republican that gets it.
Well, good.
Kind of interesting conversation. Unfortunately, we're running out of time.
You have to come back.
But I think it's important that we tell our viewers that there's a debate tonight at Ripley House starting at 6:30. And he's actually going to fly. His helicopter's waiting outside. He's going to fly and get there in 5 minutes because we're right down the street, and we appreciate your time.
We really do appreciate
you both.
Closing comments, anything?
Going to Ripley House.
Yeah. For the voter who's not planning on voting but lives in SC6, how are you going to get him there? What are you
www.bravefortexas.com. Visit me on Facebook as well. Like the page, and we'll get back to you quickly, I promise.
All right, well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, we'll be right back. You're watching Latino Talk TV. You're watching Latino Talk TV. Now we have our Dos Centavos special guest, Stace Medellin.
That's all I'm worth.
Right. So let's just get into the topic of the day, which is for the next 3 weeks the special election here in Houston, Texas. So, what's your opinion so far?
So far, I see everybody, at least the candidates that are out there. Bray, obviously, who was just here. Sylvia Garcia has been campaigning very hard. Carol Alvarado too. There's the new guy that all of a sudden came out of nowhere. It seems Joaquin Martinez. His story I'd like to talk a little bit about because we kind of announced on Facebook, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to use it as a test on my blog, see what happens. And I took his announcement and put it on my blog. And within minutes, just hundreds, and it ended up getting like a couple thousand hits ultimately, and they're from out of nowhere. And obviously, he has an online presence. You know, I think one of his biggest challenges is going to be money to deploy, you know, all sorts of resources. But from what I hear, he's got some good base behind him that's volunteering and getting the word out. And he's been out there. I heard today he had a really good interview with one major organization. So we'll see if endorsements for him start coming in, or if the battle will continue to be between Carol and Carol Alvarado and Sylvia Garcia. That's what it seems like right now. That's where the battle line is.
Well, it's pretty obvious that in any election, name ID is key to win the election. Carol, Sylvia have been there for many, many years. They've been elected officials. They obviously have the name ID that is necessary to win an election like this. What I find very interesting is that we have a lot of candidates in here, 8 candidates to be exact, and 6 of them really don't have name ID.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out, considering that we have 2 Republicans and 6 Democrats. We have a couple women and a couple men. So whenever the analysts, the data analysts do their thing after this election, it'll be interesting to see what kind of things come out of their analysis. And whatever comes out is definitely going to play a part in the runoff election.
Oh, definitely. I mean, one thing, Bray was talking numbers earlier, and every race that the last 3 races that we've had in Senate District 6 were in presidential years. So you had turnout that from 2004, I think, 2004 was about 45%. This last time it was about 49% turnout. And so you're talking about 131,000 people or something like that voted in this last election. And those numbers are more than likely going to come down a lot. You know, the last time we had something close to a special election was, I guess, 2005 during when Ana Hernandez won. Her race ultimately, I think, had a 14% turnout, and that was just in District 143, which I guess the majority of it is in SD6, if not all of it. So that's what I'm thinking, you know, in the
14% of the total
number
voters?
of the total registered voters, yes.
Okay,
Wow.
and usually what is it? What's the average?
Well, like I said, in SD6 at least, which in the last 12 years or the last 3 election cycles, was about anywhere from 44% to 49%.
Okay, so you're looking at pretty much 3 or 4 times a drop.
That's what I'm thinking.
So a quarter of the voters are going to come out to vote.
Yeah.
And-
Unless, I mean, that's the thing. I don't know what kind of polls have been out there by the campaigns. The campaigns themselves would be running them, and at least 2 of them would be able to afford that.
In a regular election, your average voter is a female, over 55, Anglo. Do they have a reason to come out to vote?
If they're part of that voting demographic here, I mean, when you look at Anglos, and it's not a stereotyping thing, it's just that, you know, they're always looking for elections. You know, they're always going by their library to see if there's an election going on. That was a joke we had when I lived up in Humble and Kingwood, that, you know, people are always looking for the next election. And because they have, you know, high voter turnout in that community. And so in the demographic in this district, it's predominantly Latino. And so I'm sure women are definitely a target, especially with the maybe middle-aged, late 40s and higher demographic. I think that's going to be, those are the people that vote in these elections.
Talk to us a little bit about the impact that the black vote will have in this actual election.
I think it does have a major impact. Bray made a point about that. I don't know if his numbers jive all completely, but yeah, you do see the Latino population here is the vast majority population-wise. But when you get down to actual registered voters or citizen voting age population, it comes down significantly from whatever. What was the Latino population here, like 60% or something like that? And so it comes down significantly. And so obviously it almost turns into a coalition district at that point. And I don't think I think Mario deserves a lot of credit. I think he got a lot of he built a coalition within all the different groups here in SD6, and so that's where I disagree with Bray a little bit, as far that there's some sort of division or something. I think ultimately it doesn't matter what neighborhood a school was in, Mario was going to be fighting for something that was in his district.
If you look at when the senator actually was the candidate for state senator, became the senator, and you fast forward to today, what has changed? Especially you're a blogger. Talk about the impact the internet has had. Like you mentioned, the young man Martinez and the online presence. You know, that's your field of expertise, blogs and all. Let's share information
on the
with that.
campaign side. It's ends up being just a small part, especially in a district like this, because you're talking about computer access and things like the internet access. For the most part, I mean, when you look at demographic information, Latinos, for the most part, are using smartphones to get on the internet, not computers, not iPads or anything like that. That makes things easier to read and access information. So again, social media and online information kind of takes a back seat a lot of times with the voting, the demographic that actually votes. But Joaquin's base that I've seen online is a lot of younger people, a lot of people that may feel just disconnected, you know, never targeted by the usual campaigns, and I think that's where Joaquin is trying to hit the most. I mean, obviously, when you have two well-funded candidates, and they know their targets, and they know they need to get a certain number of people out to vote, you know, for Joaquin or any other of the other candidates to compete against that, for that same pool of votes, it's almost like they have to build their own base. And so it seems to me like Joaquin has that online base of younger voters that, you know, these voters can see somebody they identify with. So,
after the election comes and say there is a runoff, that no one garners the 51% of the vote, how is the relationships, or what type of impact to try to go after the losing candidates to try to get them on the team?
And yeah, that would be interesting. That would be very interesting, depending on who gets in. Because if the whole...
Is it viable? Is it live? Does it have that much of an impact, or not really? Or is it a smoke screen?
It has an impact if those other candidates garnered a lot of votes and they still have influence over those voters. It could be that the voters just clicked another name because they didn't like the usual names, or a protest vote, or they were Republicans that came out to vote for Bray or for Dorothy Olmos. You know, so there's a lot of things in play, I guess, with 8 candidates. But ultimately, like Ben was saying, it's about the name ID, about how you're deploying your resources to get the vote out, how many doors you're knocking on, how many people you're calling, and I've only seen at least 3, I guess, of the campaigns that I've noticed that are really hitting that. And these are the campaigns that have been most public out there, which is Carol, Sylvia, and Joaquin, obviously. So
who are let's talk about the 8 candidates and any little bit of history that we might have on any one of them.
Okay,
the good,
well,
bad, and the ugly. I'm just kidding.
well, obviously, Mr. Bray, who was here, he got 30% of the vote, and again, that was in a high turnout, in a higher turnout race. If it turns out to be 15, 20% turnout or something like that, then again, is he going to be competing with Dorothy, or Latino Republicans that live in this district that voted for the Republican? Are they just automatically going to go with Dorothy, or, you know, obviously they have their decisions to make whether they're even going to vote. And but
the chances there could be some Democrats out there that just are tired of the usual names. They just don't.
And yeah, thing is, I think what might help a little bit is all the rhetoric that's going to be happening. Tomorrow is the start of the legislative session, the 83rd session in Austin, and already different things that are being talked about. I think today the state comptroller's office released their budget projections, their income projections. Last year, the state comptroller had predicted that they were only going to raise about $76 million for this next biennium. It turns out it's over $100 million. So now everybody's saying, well, then we need to allocate those funds back, the $5 billion back into, just to get even, I guess, with public education and with healthcare and everything else they got cut in the last session. So already that rhetoric is online, it's on TV, it's making the news. All the different elected officials are out there making their pronouncements on one side or the other. So I'm hoping that provides some energy. And just all the other issues that are going on, and some of them that Bray talked about today.
Jose, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for some reason this race is more about the individuals versus the issues. I haven't heard a lot of discussion on the issues.
No, you're right. That's what I was actually kind of wondering.
What type of an impact is? I didn't mean to cut you off, but talking on those 2 points, keying this in. Is it a big impact that the senator's family is supportive of one candidate or another?
Well, I mean, yeah, it does impact because the senator had a base. I mean, he built a base with a lot of supporters throughout the whole time that he was there. So obviously that impacts the race. But is that enough to win the election? If you can get all of them out to vote, perhaps. But there's always more that you have to do to win. That win number is always bigger than your usual base. That base that you have is supposed to get you the rest of the votes, going out. And obviously, yeah, it looks great. Sylvia Garcia, on the other hand, has her positives because she was a county commissioner, so she served a lot of the same people. And so,
what type of impact does it have that she was beaten by political unknown?
Oh no, obviously, yeah.
No-name Republican at the time.
Yeah, and that
do people look at that or not?
I think if you have to spend time explaining why you lost, then it starts making an impact, and there'll be a debate.
That's a good point.
Well, she didn't spend enough, or it was just that the Republican revolution that happened in 2010 that impacted the whole county.
Well, the Tea Party's still strong here.
And the Tea Party, yeah, definitely.
They definitely
still strong.
put their word out and come out for this election.
But we also have to remember that Commissioner Precinct 2 is very different demographically than Senate District 6. So it doesn't necessarily have the same type of impact with voters, because the majority of voters that she served that live in SD6 probably enjoyed her service. Beyond the ones that were beyond those SD6 boundaries out in whether it's Pasadena or other areas toward Clear Lake. I think she also had some very Republican areas out there that turned out. They had 80-90% turnout in some of those precincts.
So let's go through the names, because we haven't even covered all the names. You keep talking about the first 4. So there's R.W. Bray, who showed up today. Thank you. And we also have ex-Commissioner Commissioner Sylvia Garcia, State Representative Carol Alvarado. We also have
Dorothy Olmos.
Candidate. She's run for several things before. Has she ever been elected for anything?
No. She's run for State House 143. I know most recently she ran for the State Board of Education against Lawrence Allen, I believe was her Democratic opponent, and that's a very Democratic district, and so he won. Prior to that, I think she ran for District 8 of Houston ISD against Juliet Stepech. And Juliet defeated her.
And she's Rudy Reyes.
Rudy Reyes, and he was also invited. We haven't sent an invitation to everybody, but we got 2 more Mondays, and all the candidates, if you're watching this or you have your team watching this, you're welcome to come and spend a good 20 minutes with us, just like the R.W. Bray did, and educate us on why you want to be our next senator.
Martinez.
Who else? Joaquin Martinez, who's from Neighborhood Centers, a regional community organizer. What else do we have? There's 2 more. Okay, so that's how prepared we are. We apologize for that.
Do you think that some of these candidates may be, and just talking political strategy, throwing their name in a hat just to be able to maybe looking at running down the line at future spots that may be coming up in the area?
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, as soon as I mentioned Joaquin, that I did put that test balloon out there, I got emails from other bloggers. I was like, why is he running? He doesn't have any name ID. And maybe he should wait to run for District I, or that he should. And they're already people that didn't live in the district were already trying to find positions for him because he sounds really good, but oh, maybe he's not ready yet. So I think for anybody that's out there, even the winning candidates, I think this is a good test for them, no matter what. Obviously, Sylvia Garcia, although she was defeated, she never really left. She was always involved, but just not electorally. And Carol has been very much involved in her district 145 and everything that goes along with that. So,
Any spoilers on election day?
the one that I don't know, for some reason I just keep liking what he's doing, what he's saying.
Really,
is Joaquin.
Martinez, wow.
Is Joaquin, because just because, something about that.
It's interesting.
Something about
No, it's good.
the online presence and everything, and the first report that came out on Newsfix on him, kind of slammed him, and
they
I was
slammed him
like,
hard.
oh, they slammed him hard. I was like, oh, he's inexperienced, he's this, and so I asked him about it, and he basically said, I'm not afraid of showing my inexperience. Maybe that's how he can connect with voters sometimes, that they're not the ones that are connected. They're not the ones that have the big contributors or something like that. So he has the mindset of somebody that can find another niche. He realizes what he's up against, and so if he can build something to do an end run, obviously,
Is that pie in the sky, though? I mean, really?
And that was a big online discussion about that. Well, they're saying it's all about money, but what about the person? Unfortunately, I mean, it does become about the money. It's about getting your name out there on TV with your signs, with and getting people knocking on doors for you.
Well, there's been other candidates that have done that. That was so-called pie in the sky. We had.
Well, Mormon, who beat Sylvia Garcia.
And again, I think that goes back.
He was even more shocked than anybody else.
And I think that goes back to
I won. Yeah.
he was asleep when the results came back. But no, I mean, I think that one was an anomaly of sorts, because again, the Republicans really came out to vote.
How vulnerable will he be this next go round?
Who, Mormon?
Yeah.
I don't know. It depends on what the outcome ultimately is on the redistricting, but on the redistricting lawsuit that some of the activists here have against the county. But
What about this appointment of Erlinda Garcia over there at HCC? Well, talk about that. What are the bloggers and stuff saying about that?
Actually, we haven't really talked. I've been talking more with some of my other friends, activist friends, community activists, and I know that there was a lot of talk about somebody who really wanted the position and somebody else was pushed for the position instead, and that's politics, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, people have strong opinions about individuals, and ultimately that's what comes out, and feelings probably end up hurt too, but. It's like, I don't know how many times I've had my feelings hurt, but you just move on.
I get my feelings hurt every day. I get over it pretty quickly.
That's just from the stuff I tell you,
I go home every night. I'm married.
No comment.
Well, right? My wife's watching. She'll beat me up when I get home. No, okay, we have the candidates are Maria Selva.
She's a Green Party candidate, and she ran this last November. I think got a couple percentage points at the most.
Okay.
I forget what she ran.
Now, what
for.
about the some of the?
There's one more lady on here. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
We're using our high
She's
tech.
the one who ran against the senator before.
Yes,
Susan
Susan
Delgado.
Delgado.
There you go.
No website, no Facebook page, no Twitter account as so far, according to Off the Cuff. So shout out to our friends at Off the Cuff. Well, I'll leave that part out. She had a relationship prior to. Okay, we'll leave that one alone.
But it's
You're
really
welcome to Google
interesting.
it if you want to. So
It's really interesting to see that the senator being passed away and everything, that in the polls his numbers are just huge. So that may be some sort of asset to the candidate that the family is endorsing.
Definitely, no doubt about that. I think everybody's just waiting to see, what happens. I mean, we're seeing everybody working, and but when you live outside, when you're outside looking in, it's
What happens afterward? The old Can't we all get along, or is that just?
Well,
pie
I
in
mean,
the
I
sky
keep saying,
also?
I keep saying. I said it the last time.
We all got frenemies out there.
That's
the way
Greg's
politics
favorite
work.
word, pie in the sky.
Pie in the sky.
Is it reality?
Frenemies
Will
and
everyone be able to get along?
I said it last time I was here. We have no choice but to get along. You know, if we want to, I don't care if you're smiling and you turn around and you're making caras after that. You know, we have to. We have some very specific issues that a lot of us support, whether it's on education or healthcare or things like that. We need to work together, and maybe somebody has a better idea than the other person. We all have to be open with each other and be willing to talk about things.
Ben brought up a good point. We've spent the last 50 minutes talking about people, but we've never talked about purpose or
Issues.
Yeah.
So
Maybe that's what they're talking about.
I mean, isn't an election almost a popularity contest of some sort?
Oh, I mean, definitely. I
So
mean,
let me ask you this now: the young man Joaquin, the young man, and
he's not
you
that
said
young.
he
Brady's
got-
younger than him.
No, but that he got beat up with the bloggers and what have you. Well, what type of effect does it have the other side of one of the senior candidates? Does it hurt or help?
like his campaign toward them.
Yeah, going from one side of the spectrum to the other. If you really look at the issues and being effective and having, say, a 10-year span, 20-year span, age, well, let's talk about that.
Oh, and again, you know, and people are always going to remember who served them. And I think that's the main thing that he's up against. Because Carol has been a city council member and mayor pro tem and the state rep also, she's actually served people. Those offices are about constituency services for the most part. When it's taxpayers calling you and you have to react to them. And so people remember that. Those are the voters, you know, really. The ones that are making phone calls that need their trash picked up, those are the ones that remember to vote in November. And so for Joaquin, I think a lot of his experience is working with young people. But that's a demographic we need to work on too, you know, win or lose. And this is what is important regarding Joaquin, you know, win or lose or run off or not.
That he's engaged.
That he's engaged and that he keeps those people engaged, and that people like Carol and Sylvia, or if they win, keep those folks engaged also. Because they have to connect with those folks that didn't support them too.
Well, what are the issues? Once again, what are the issues? We don't what
I mean, there's a lot of issues.
2,000 above poverty level in the Aldine area. We don't have a lot of new development or economic growth in certain parts of the Senate District 6, do we?
No,
Well,
and a
for-
lot of
for
it,
the viewers.
But also you got to also think about what we've just gone through as a nation as far as the recession and everything else. So, I mean, I think if you said politically in a lot of districts, there would probably be the same results as far as lack of jobs and opportunity and everything else. So as the economy continues to improve, that would have an impact on.
Okay. Well, we have 8 minutes left in the show, and we're going to take the last 7 minutes to dedicate to the
top stories
top
of
stories
2012.
of 2012. Ben, it's all you.
All right, and this is based on Google searches. Okay, so it might be a little deceptive here. So the top 10
That's the word of the day.
news stories.
so
if you
none of
will.
them are mine that I wrote. So.
It says here, mass shootings was number 1. Mass shootings, and that includes the Hook Elementary, where the 20 kids were shot.
Sandy Hook, yeah.
Yeah. And number 2, the U.S. election for president. And as you all know, that was a big deal for many, many months. How many debates did we have?
Just on the Republican side, they had so many debates, but then we had, 3 debates? Yeah, 3 debates, and then the one presidential debate. So.
Getting back to the mass shootings, why does it seem as if most of the time the shooters involved in it are Caucasian descent? I mean, it seems to be. Is there some type of trend there? I mean, just looking at.
Well, it appears there has been.
That's hard to tell.
Where's our psychotherapist?
Psychotherapist didn't show up today.
Where's Kim McGowan when we need him?
No, that's a very good point, though. But
Yeah.
a lot of the suspects in a lot of the mass shootings have been Caucasian white males. And there was a story on ABC News discussing that very specific issue. So,
All right, number 3, Stace Medellin's blog.
Finally made it somewhere. Somebody had to mention it.
Isn't that number
No, it
11?
was Superstorm Sandy.
Yeah.
Okay, and then
They
number
finally got some relief funds.
finally.
The start.
Yeah, but just look at the how quick O'Boehner retracted on his comment as far as relief money. You know, I mean, that whole area right there was just devastated. You know, wow.
I really liked the governor of New Jersey.
Christie.
Yeah, I'm impressed by him. I like him. He needs to come to Texas.
Number 4,
Just
Obamacare.
kidding.
Obamacare passed in the Supreme Court. Number 5, Libya, the September 11th, I guess when the U.S. ambassador was killed. Number 6, the Penn State coach Jerry Sandusky.
Yeah, that was huge.
Number 7, the U.S. economy. Number 8, right behind that is fiscal cliff. Number 9, gay marriage allowed in several states. Number 10, Syria, civil war, 40,000 dead.
Wow.
So those were the top 10 of 2012.
But look at all the people rushing out and buying automatic weapons, you know, because they're thinking that the government is going to ban them and whatever. I mean, they're flying off the shelves at all those gun stores and whatever.
Yeah, how do you feel about gun control?
Oh,
Do you think that teachers should have the authority to bring guns to school?
No, you know, I fall kind of in the middle. I have family members that are gun enthusiasts. They're hunters, but even they say automatic weapons really what for? I mean, it's like a joke that I said I don't like bullet fragments in my
deer
venado tamales. You know, so you know, just you know, it's a sport. You know, if you're going to treat it as a sport, treat it as a sport, not as a I don't know, some sort of somebody with anger issues or something. It seems like when you're trying to shoot up something like that. So as far as safety in the school districts and things like that, I'm more partial to police departments, I guess. I know Houston ISD has a police department. I know they have partnerships with the with the different law enforcement agencies. Obviously, there's problems, you know, with that also. I think the community needs to get more involved to ensure that the police departments are doing their jobs and serving the community well, you know, and protecting and doing the job of protecting rather than enforcing traffic laws, you know, sometimes in some of these situations.
They need to put some emphasis on the mental illness.
That's-
I mean, you
yeah,
know,
that's-
you worked at the
I worked at
sheriff's
sheriff,
department, and at any given Sunday, like they say, well, how many mentally ill inmates were they? I mean, you know, that's the, you know.
And a
think
lot
it
of
was
that
a
goes back
quarter-
to funding that has to be approved through the state legislature. And that's, you know, Mr. Bray didn't mention anything about that. And that's a major issue, you know, whether it's education, whether it's mental health. A lot of that we're asking for teachers to carry guns so we don't have to pay for professionally trained police officers. I mean, they're trying to skirt money so they can just dole out. They're not buying the guns either for the teachers. I mean, they're just taking things out of the air to.
What you say, Johnny?
Right? Can you imagine? No.
I know I angered teachers when I was growing up. So
You still do.
Oh,
You
yeah.
read their blogs.
I can tell you one of the top stories here in 2013 in Houston, Texas will be the mayor's race.
or I was going to say District I, but
No, the mayor's race. And I think it's going to be a very interesting race.
So who's going to run for mayor this year?
That I
Ben
don't know.
Mendez.
I know Ben Hall is.
Ben Hall for one. Okay.
All right, but there are probably going to be several people jumping in.
Mayor's running for re-election, right?
Right.
Okay. I was going to say Kathy Whitmire. I can't believe that. That's the first thing that came in my head. I went way back.
He
showing my
was
age.
going to say, and he says it anyway.
I was going to say, so I went ahead and
gonna
said it. But anyways, no, but in all seriousness, for those that are out there, any closing remarks?
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, you can.
Man, Javier looks sharp today.
Yes, he
Look at
looks-
him. Man.
Javier, our camera, our stage manager, production manager, is all dressed up today.
hairstylist.
Absolutely.
He
So
even combed his hair for us. Man, I'm impressed.
you're watching Latino Talk TV, and the reason we're on the air for you is that we want to make sure that that you're informed of different points of view. You know, sometimes you might think we all agree, but a lot of times we don't. Truth is that the tax dollars that are being collected from you, from sales taxes to property taxes to any kind of tax, payroll taxes, whatever it is, our elected officials control where those things are going to be spent. And it is up to you to get involved and make sure you know where that money is going. So people like Mr. Bray and all the other candidates, you got to know what they're really about. And then you got to get up and actually go vote. Early voting started today. Okay, and if you live in Senate District 6 and you have any election, the special election, you can now go vote tomorrow. Don't wait until the last minute to try to go figure out if you're going to participate. Get active, look them up, find out what they're about, because this is your money. I mean, this is all our money, but if we don't get involved, you know, we're just throwing our money away. Okay, so any goodbyes, anything ready for next week?
Shout out for Ken McGowan, who's visiting us today.
Welcome, Ken. And for everybody out there, we are going to continue inviting the candidates. They'll all get the opportunity, the same as Mr. Bray, to get a good 20-minute interview and talk about why they want to be the candidate. So join us next Monday night here on Houston Media Source. Have a great night. You're watching Latino Talk to Me. Good night.